there was still the other part that said, you're not really one of us. Or if you're kind of one of us, as long as you're a comfortable part separation. When I lived in the South, I recognized this, that there was this comfort level. If the different societies of Black society and white society lived near each other, but separate, within some kind of a safe emotional distance. When you start demanding equality on a true social level, that becomes dangerous. You cross the line. Douglass, and I can't remember this date now, 18, he remarried a much younger woman after his wife had passed. Helen Pitts, her name was, and she's an activist. Loved Douglass. She really admired Douglass, but part of their marriage was a protest. He's white. And their marriage caused a marvelously huge scandal that just went everywhere. And it was, in many ways, to challenge the continued race segregation culturally that we had. In Douglass' you had economic, political, and social equality must be there. And so to marry her was a way of casting and trying to force the issue in many ways. I think it seems to me this was a love match as well, but it is a political match, strange and awkward way. But because they touched the social mores of that time period, they are critiqued, and that probably maybe even why maybe Douglass was forgotten for a while or ignored for a while, because that's just a step too far for so many people. And I remember my own parents, being concerned over that back in the 60s. Just, well, if a white girl and a Black guy get married, or vice versa, who's going to be their family? Who's going to accept them? Because we lived in a segregated world in the North, and it's really hard to put those together properly. Where, dude, you're people, lighten up. I've seen a lot of hope in that one, but that's I saw that that kind of segregated society not even 60 years ago. That's not that long ago. That really is a short time. So those formats, those structures, those behaviors, cultural patterns, the way we interpret law sometimes, those are all kind of embedded in there. And I think bit by bit, they have to be pulled out. And that's what we're facing right now, bit by bit. And not always, and we're not doing it particularly well or easily. Sometimes those have to be pulled out, but something to define what they are. Is it in land use? Is it in simply a perception? Is it a prejudice? What is it that keeps our societies somewhat separate? Is there something else that has to be done? And those are not easy questions, because, as I like to say, there's baggage. Meaning there's emotional baggage in that one. For the family, of the African American family, there's baggage, there's anger, animosity of past treatments. Grandpa's stories about this. The history of lynchings. Those are not that far back. That really aren't that far back, as we like to imagine. No, they're not. That's close. And we look at the issue on the United Kingdom. I mean, Irish and English have been at a deep hatred for one another for 600 years. So, the grudges, cultural grudges, do not get healed easily.
I like the term that you use, because I want you to explore it a little bit further. In that you said they are not one of us. Of course, that is how the people see it, see people of African American, people that are different from a certain group of Americans who believe that they are the real Americans. So when you use terms like that, what is it supposed to mean? That the people that are real Americans are just one group of people? If you are maybe the indigenous American, you are not a real American. If you are coming from China, you are not a real American, even though your parents have been there for many years. If you are coming from Africa, you're not a real American. So I want you to expand on that a bit.
That was tough, because who are you talking to and where are you standing? Men like Douglass In fact, in the 1880s, when the Congress passed the Chinese Exclusion Act, he protested this because you're keeping out another group of people seeking a different life. And so he protested this thing because you did it to me. He protested the very act of doing anything that would keep others out because they are judged different. He says, we're all different, for pity's sakes, so we have a long history, in fact, dealing with Native American, even the indigenous peoples. Now it even gets worse. If you're looking for a listing of bad behaviors of, the genocide of Native Americans is worse. That one is much more conscious, and it's embedded, beginning with early English colonization practices, and then as America grew and became very land hungry, that practice gets much more dominant when we get into the 1800s, until it kind of hits this ghastly climax in the 1830s under the Jackson administration. This is a point where it becomes really depressing to study U.S. history. Now, the one value is that there are groups of people, political parties, churches that are vehemently opposing this. They vehemently oppose the treatment of indigenous peoples like in this way. They are, hostile, and yet do not have the votes to change Congress. There is enough of a majority, and because of the unified Southern system defined by slavery, that again makes their position, their personal interest dominate Congress. The areas, our history kind of goes that direction. It follows Southern interests throughout the 1830s, 40s, into the 1850s. In many ways, the Civil War, because it's tied to slavery, is also about Southerners losing that ability to control national interest in their favor. Real American, when you use the word, if somebody uses the word, or whenever I hear the word real American, I question that. What do you mean? I want to poke down. What do you mean, real? Because we're a composite, and this is an argument what may have made. We are a composite. Even by 18th century standards, we're a composite. Yes, they kind of look more like Germans, Irish, Scots, English, French, Swiss, Nords. They do tend to look a little bit alike. However, by the 17th, 18th century standards, they were very different. We should, and I use that word carefully, have formed some identity, by the 1780s that said, okay, look, we have a lot of different people here. We just are going to keep growing different. In fact, many of the founders, like Jefferson, he knew there would be Muslims coming in. In fact, there already were people of Islamic faith here. They were from Africa. Many of the enslaved were Muslim, coming from Africa. So there, we had enough of a Jewish community to become notable. So we had others here who weren't Protestant. When in the past we used the word real American, they tended to mean somebody from an roughly English background, Protestant background. And I use that word loosely, meaning they were definitely not Catholic and definitely not Jewish, but vaguely Protestant. That becomes the definition. The former American Party, it's called, used the term real Americans, and because they became known as the Know Nothing Party later on. Probably because they said, they don't have any policy. They know no policies at all. Don't know any policies, but their policy was to limit some kind of creation of a limit of immigration or voting rights just to those who they thought, and I use the word carefully, were real Americans. And they did not, of course, they would not consider Native indigenous peoples real Americans, certainly not any African Americans. And if you were of Jewish faith or Muslim faith or Catholic, they also would not consider that. In fact, we've had riots over just which translation of the Bible to use. Philadelphia was racked by called the Bible riots in the 1840s because of Catholics' kids would not use a King James Bible. That's a Protestant Bible. Well, then bring your Douay translation. It's English. No, that's a Catholic Bible. It's not real. Oh my God.